Excellent. So, welcome to another MongoDB World Hackathon 22 live stream. We're trying to bring you these more regularly. And for those that are just tuning in and don't know anything about the MongoDB World Hackathon, you're in for a treat. We're going to tell you a lot today about the data set that we're using. But for those wanting to find out more and wanting to join, just go to mongodb.com/world-2022. /hackathon, and you will find all the information that you need there. This is a hackathon that we're running from April 11th till May 20th. So we're in our second week. We've got 200 plus people registered so far, building some great stuff. And we're going to find out now how to build with the GDELT dataset. And for that, I am joined by Joe Drumgoole, who's the Senior Director of Developer Relations here at MongoDB and my boss. So I better be good. Hi, Joe. How are you?
How are you doing, Shane? If you don't like the GDELT dataset, then I'm to blame, because it's been a minor obsession of mine for the last couple of years, ever since I built it initially for a customer who was interested in this. If you haven't come across GDELT before, it stands for Global Database of Events, Location, and Tone. And what it is a high-resolution database of political news events around the world, captured in fairly real time. And it consists of a set of records which are encoding the tone, the location, the actors, and the actions they took within these news events. One of the challenges of capturing and analyzing a broad spectrum of news events is to analyze them, you've got to decode the text and encode it in a way in which you can effectively describe actor one, the action they took, the impact on actor two, and the general tone of the conversation. And this has been an area of research for many years. Just to let you know, the GDELT dataset started loading in 2015, and there are earlier datasets associated with it. So they use an encoding called Cameo coding. We've got some links later on that I'll show you in the packages that we're going to show. And Cameo coding effectively is a numerical encoding of the news events in terms of actors and actions and locations. So it's a large, high-resolution, very interesting data set. And the most important thing, and the thing that makes it more interesting than most public data sets, is it's updated in real time. So you get a new file added to the data set every 15 minutes or so. So we think this is a fantastic data set to play around with, and also to play around with your programming and your knowledge and your understanding, because there's something new to look at every 15 minutes. Now, we do not expect every developer in the world to load a multi-terabyte data set into their local machines or indeed in the cloud. And we are offering credits to all the participants of the hackathon, but even with credits, you'd struggle to load terabytes of data. So we've built some tools. The first version of these came out a couple of weeks ago, but got lots of feedback from internal and external that they were too hard to use, too difficult to work through. And if you weren't a super duper Python expert, it's quite tricky to get your head around them. So we've repackaged these tools. And what I'm going to do is show you today how to load a basic subset of the data for GDELT and what you can do with that data set once you've loaded it. So without further ado, this is the Python package you need to load. It's called...
Let me just get up the screen there. So your screen is shared there, Joe, so you can work away. Hopefully people can see it. A bit of housekeeping before. If you have some comments, we're streaming on Twitch and YouTube Live at the same time. So please add your comments. Myself and Joe will try and address those throughout as well, too. And as I said at the very beginning, the registration is up on mongodb.com/world-2022/hackathon. But if you're already a MongoDB user and already on our forums, you can simply go to our forums, which is mongodb.com/community, and you will see the hackathon category there, and jump in there and join. We've got a lot of people, as I said, close to 200 plus people this stage, and we're really using this time now to talk about GDELT. but we do live streaming about 5 or 6 times a week. So tomorrow evening, GMT time, we're also showing with Nick Raboy, one of our other developer advocates, how we're working along with our own minimal viable product in our own news browser. So please stay tuned to that. So we've got an events calendar up on the forums on the hackathon. But as Joe said, this session, this live stream is all about GDELT. And so, Joe, please pop through everything that you put together there for us.
Sure.
This is great.
So this is the Python package. Now, as long as you have Python installed, and if you don't have Python installed, you can just pop over to python.org. It works on every machine I've ever used, from mainframes down to my Raspberry Pis. Once you've installed it, you just run pip install GDELT tools, and that will install this package. And the first thing I want you to try out is this command, GDELT -- master. And I'm going to go to my terminal now. Now, I already have GDELT installed. Great. So you'll see I get a command line script, GDELT loader -h, gives you all the options. That version number is important because I'm going to be updating this pretty regularly, hopefully not breaking it. But if you check, you can always do pip install -- upgrade GDELT tools to get the latest version. And I've already got the latest version, so we're all good to go. So GDELT loader, as I said, -h.
So, Joe, we got a comment here about zooming in a bit. I know we tried to make it as big as possible. You're very lucky with a large monitor, so pop a bit more would be great. Super, thank you.
Can people see that?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
No problem. So I've done some downloading here, so I'm going to make clean. In the repo, and the repo is the other place you should be paying attention to. There's the README from the Python package, but there's going to be other utilities in the repo as we go along. And so this is also, if you look at the help file, in case you're wondering where the repo is, luckily enough, we pop it in right at the bottom here. So you can always find the repo. And within the repo, which I've got running here, you can see there's a make file. Let me go to this IDE. This is PyCharm, but you can use any IDE you want. I've got a bunch of kind of tasks here in the make file. So I've got some Git updates, which probably won't be relevant to you. But this one is interesting, reshape, which is going to allow us to reshape the data. We've got data load, which will get the last 20 days. Use Mongo import to import them, and then reshape them. So I can run make data load now, and it will actually load the last 20 days of data. Is that wrong? I think I've just downgraded my GDELT. Let me run this over the command line.
This is the curse of doing these live streams.
That's okay.
That's okay. This is normal.
I can do these manually, actually. So we can do GDELT loader -- master. And this is going to download the master file. This is the list of all the files that are currently in the GDELT data set. And it's going to give you a master file, which is full.
When you say all the files, that's just the structure, right?
Yeah, it's the CSV files. So each day has a CSV file associated with it. So the updates are done daily. So we update each file daily, and then we roll them into the master file. So there's a file per day. And so once we've got these, we can then do GDELT loader minus master and then minus download. Now it knows the master file is downloaded, so it's not going to get it again. So it's going to start downloading all of these files. Now, we don't want to download every file under the sun because that's going to take forever, fill our disk, and we won't want to load them. So we can use minus last, which gets us the last 20 days of the data set. And now we're just going to download the last 20 days.
Perfect. Perfect. Any idea of what size those are, Joe? The last 20 days, what would that be?
So this is a great question, and I promise you by the time we do a live stream, I'll have done some analysis, because the size of the data set on disk is not related to the size of the data set in the database. And I haven't done any analysis of that yet. Plus, there are other options we can do, like improving the compression and using the data lake to make it cheaper and easier to store this data. So by the time we get on the call next time, we'll have all that data. So I'm just going to download that data again. So get the last 20 days.
We're giving the hackathon participants 2 ways to work with this data. They could do exactly what you're doing here themselves and use their own set, or we also will have a cluster that we can share with them as well too, which will have a limited set of data. But for those that don't want to go through this process, we have a get out of jail clause for them.
Yeah.
But we would, I think, you know, that's constraining the way we've downloaded the data and how we formatted and reshaped it. So if anybody else wants to move beyond that or get a, you know, a longer time span, this is what they would be doing. Isn't that correct, Joe?
That's correct. I mean, and this allows you to work at your own pace. If you wanted to work on your own laptop, if you wanted to work offline, you don't need the whole data set to do development on. You need a couple of days at most. The more data you have, the more interesting the queries will be. And that's why we want to give you the whole data set. Well, I do have the ambitions to load the whole data set into a MongoDB cluster. We're ticking over with that at the moment. So
yeah, I mean, I think you're right, because I mean, once you understand one record, everything else is the same. It's just going back time and, you know, going back the number of days that you want as well too.
Exactly.
So this is what we're trying to get across here, a little bit of understanding of what a record looks like and how to get the data in the first place, and hopefully, time permitting, maybe how to get into MongoDB, but we'll see.
So you'll see now we've got a bunch of CSV files. It should be about 20. There's about 20. Great, program works. And now I've written an import script, which basically unwraps all of the complexities of the import command. And so it's going to iterate over all the CSV files, import them. We use this field file called GDELT field file.ff to make sure the file types are correct. I'm setting the write concern to 1 because I'm local, and honestly, you know, it'll either all go up or it'll failure. It just makes things happen a little faster. And so what I can do now is just run this. I'm going to just drop the collections beforehand because I want a clean data set. So let me just drop GDELT2. This is on my local machine. So you can see it's running there on that little window behind. So you'll see as we do operations here, that will scroll away, showing us doing various things on the database.
Excellent.
So let me do Mongo import. And it's going to whip through. It's fairly quicky. It's fairly quick. Don't worry about that. It just goes into the interactive mode afterwards. And what you'll find now, if we go back to, let me just bump up the volume on this.
Yeah, that's a teeny window. We're going to have to make that a good bit bigger, hopefully.
That's the wrong direction. Command plus. Now we'll make that window a bit bigger. This is Compass, our GUI tool. You should definitely, I mean, if you don't have the Compass tool open when you're developing, you're kind of programming MongoDB with a hand tied behind your back. So there's the GDELT2 database we created. Now, 20 days is, look, it's about 10 megabytes, right? That's the raw data. And so if you look at this collection, it's exactly like a CSV file. It's just filled in column to value, column to value. And so now what we want to do is we'd love to reshape that data, because as you can see, it's still effectively in tabular format. And we can see there's natural foldings to make here. We could fold all the actor 1 objects. We could fold all the actor 2 objects, all the actor 1 geos. And so we want to run an aggregation on this. And the aggregation I'm going to run is also in this repo. It's
okay.
called,
So for those that might be unfamiliar with aggregations, Joe, a quick kind of headline on what an aggregation does to your data. Putting you on the
watch
spot.
and learn. If you're not using the aggregation framework, like one hand tied behind your back is no compass, and the other hand tied behind your back is not using the aggregation framework. It's effectively a pipeline of operations that allow us to transform data, set and unset fields, aggregate data, effectively creating new data from old. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the event CSV data, run it through an aggregation, and make a new collection, which is just a bit more sensible for MongoDB to parse and easier to understand. And so if we look at this GDELT reshaper file, if I can find it in my morass of files, here we go. So this is an aggregation, and it's effectively a set of MongoDB document operations. Okay. So we're adding fields, and what these fields are doing is we're creating a new actor 1 geo field, which is now a geolocation point, and its coordinates are going to be input actor 1 geo long, which is that field we saw before. We're going to convert to type the double. We're not going to care about errors. And that $convert will result in a new document type, which is a GeoJSON point, which we can then use with GeoJSON queries. So we convert all of the geo locations first, and then we're going to map all the fields. So we're going to fold all the actor 1 fields under an actor 1 subdocument. Same thing for actor 2. The same thing for actions. And then we're going to unset all these fields that we folded. So effectively, we end up with a brand new document. As I look at this now, I'm realizing we may need to do a few more of these geos. There's actor 1 geo, action geo, and I'm wondering if there's another geo. Anyway, that's for me to work out. So now we're going to do is we're going to run this reshaper. And again, if you look at the make file, I've made all these commands inside the make file to make it easier for people to remember them. If you don't have make, you can just cut and paste these commands into your shell. But in this case, we're going to use the Mongo shell. Let me just get out of that. And we're going to do make reshape. Is it reshape or reshaper? It's reshape. Fantastic. And again, I want to make sure that my collections are clean. So I'm going to get rid of, make sure there's no events. So this is going to make a new collection called events, which is this data folded into the new shape. So let's
Can you make the text in the main compass window bigger as well? Is that?
Yeah, sure.
That's really small for most.
Let's try again. Zoom. No, that's zoom in.
Yeah, a couple of times the other way should do it, definitely.
How's that?
Perfect. Perfect. That's great.
No problemo.
Excellent.
Now we're going to do make reshape and pray that this works. Takes a few seconds, but that's, that's 10 megabytes of data processed in like a couple of seconds. What we'll see now, if we refresh our window, is we've got an events object or an events collection. So now if we look at the events collection, you're going to see something much more akin to what we'd expect in MongoDB. So actor 1 is a folded object. It's got geolocation data, it's got type, it's got coordinates. So now this is starting to look much more like the kind of object we want to play around with in MongoDB. And so if you're going to do this, you want to follow these steps. Now, this didn't work for me because there's some problem, because why would you have a completely error-free demo? But you can see data load here is going to download 30 days of data. It's going to run Mongo import, and it's going to run the reshaper. And now you'll have a clean data set and we encourage people to use the same terms as ourselves. So the GDELT 2, which is the database name, events for actually processed events, and events CSV from a loaded event. So the tools will pick these names automatically if you're doing this yourself. Just so everybody can understand what you're doing. If you follow that model, everybody will understand your data set, and anybody joining and reading and watching these videos will be able to relate to stuff they see in projects that they start to join. Now, because we're processing quite a large amount of data, one of the things I have been working on, which isn't ready yet, but should be ready in the next sort of day or so, is what I'm calling a validator.
Okay.
Find that for you now. Where's it gone? There we go. And all this is a MongoDB program. It's going to grab a set of documents from event CSV. So we're going to use another aggregation function, which basically is a $sample operator, which basically says, get me 10 random documents. And what we're going to do is we're going to whip through those documents and check them against the new sync data set, which is in events, and compare the fields and make sure the values are accurate and correct. And you know, you can specify the sample size of 10 or increase that to 50 or 100 or 150. I mean, ultimately, you could just do a thing for the whole data set, and that might take a while. But the whole point is we want to be able to convince ourselves that if we do a processing step, or if you decided to change the processing yourself, that you could, of course, validate that the steps you've made and the data you changed is still correct. So again, think of this as the source tree, that the GitHub package is going to be a source for a range of tools to help you do what you're doing. The Python package automates GDELT loader, and I may put other executable tools into the package in the future, which is why you should keep up to date with that. And this is effectively a way to get bootstrapped into this environment. After that, what we're going to do in subsequent live streams is talk a little bit more about the data format inside GDELT, how to understand and parse these. And one of the ambitions we have is to write some kind of a viewer that will effectively return the Cameo codes back to something a bit more human readable.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out too that all of this work that you're doing here now is going to be in the resources section of the hackathon up on our community forum. So anybody looking for that, we have to update a previous piece of the resources there too with the new stuff that you built there, Joe, today. So very much appreciate that and to go through that.
And I can tell you right now, I am very much a journeyman programmer. The fact that I can do this in what was basically I did the original coding way back in the day, probably a couple of years ago, but turning it into a package, doing the reshaping, took me only a few days work. And that's in between my various other duties, you know, as a director at MongoDB. So the point is, this is not an overwhelming job. What's overwhelming is when you first come across the GDELT data set, the information is scattered far and wide, and it's very hard to bring it together. So what we're endeavoring to do is bring all the best information about GDELT together in one place. And what we'd love to see you do is create some amazing applications on top of this data set, which we're going to load for you. Absolutely load some of your own in your free tier, or pay for a tier with our credits and load a bit more. Try out some of the data lake features of MongoDB if you want to keep your costs down in terms of storage. But once you've got something working, bring it to our public data set and run it on that. Run it on the large data set. And if you need us to run it for you on EC2 instances that are a little heavier and hitting than your own machine, we can make that happen as well. But the point is to bring us something amazing. What can we learn about the future of our world from the events of the past? That's what I'm interested in. How can we understand our world by looking at how things have happened in the past? How can we do better in the future? How can we make a better world from the world that we know? And if you can do that, then this will be a worthwhile hackathon.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the key thing for us to have this theme as well too is that we can use our forums and our community to help each other. So everybody's trying to make sense of the GDELT data set, the structure of the GDELT data set, how a record looks, what's important in there. And there's, you know, it has some idiosyncrasies, some quirkiness that we will explain in future live streams as well too. And, you know, we hope that coming together, joining together to look at this data set. I mean, Joe, I think you'll agree, if you go to gdeltproject.org, it's not the best website in the world. So it's really, really hard to digest the extent. And I suppose it is a fantastic data set to work with. As you said, the current structure goes back to 2015, but there is prior structure goes back to 1979, I think, as well, too. So there's an enormous amount of data there. And we're looking to work with a subset of it initially, maybe lots more of it as we go along as well. I think the key thing is that we are going to, as I said at the very beginning of this live stream, we're going to be running GDELT sessions twice a week. We're going to be running introductions to MongoDB twice a week as well too, as well as our onboarding sessions. We will be doing them. This is a global hackathon. We will be doing those sessions across different time zones to suit APAC, Europe, and also the US as well too. So keep an eye on the event calendar in the community for mongodb.com in the hackathon category, and you will see the upcoming live streams that we're doing. Directly after this, if you're interested, we are also on Twitter Spaces discussing the hackathon as well too. And tomorrow, 5 p.m. GMT, 12 Eastern, we are also doing our own hacking with our own minimal viable product with Nick Raboy, where we're building a news browser over the next 4 to 5 weeks alongside everybody else hacking in together with this. The ultimate goal is that towards the deadline, May 20th, is that we're seeing all of these submissions come through. But ultimately, what we're also looking for too is participants in the hackathon to share their development, just like Joe has gone through there. Here's what they've built. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm stuck with. We have a team of developer relations people available on our forums and also manning these live streams to help anybody out. So, you know, you need to shout up. You need to kind of overcome your fear of jumping across the parapet and kind of getting noticed. Shout up, ask questions in the forums, jump onto the live stream, ask comments as well too. We are here to help.
And the key thing to realize is, you know, one of the sales reps in MongoDB came to me, it's probably 4 years ago now, and said, we're interested in this data set. Can you load some into MongoDB? And like I said, I'm a good programmer, not a great programmer. That was my wife there checking on me.
Live streaming is always good. You need a dog and some small children to run in as well.
I think so, yeah. I'll make her famous now. When I first came to it, it was overwhelming. And when you see something overwhelming, you've got to slow down and not panic. And so it took me a while to get over the initial format and the structure and the downloader. And I got there. It took about a week and a half of kind of grinding it out. And I had a bit more time in those days. I was working as an IC. So the point is, don't try and boil the world here. Start with something small. Maybe start with understanding it for yourself. Maybe start with doing some basic querying. Get used to the data, and suddenly it'll start to blossom, you know. And a really small project, which is, here's a great project. Map all the news event locations. Because the great thing about a mapping tool is, if it's just static data, you map all the locations and then the day is done. But with updates every 15 minutes, you can grab those new data sets and remap the data. And now you've got the ability to show news events happening around the globe. That, for me, would be a wonderful thing to do, a relatively straightforward thing to do in OpenStreetMap or Google Maps. And now you're at the races. And when you do that, somebody else gets inspiration to do something else. So we're trying to inspire you by building the best tools for loading the data. Mark Smith, who has been on some of the stream, but is a bit laid out at the moment. Mark is going to be building automated tools within our own realm or Atlas services environment, that'll all be shared as well. You too can use that to load up your data. So the point is, we're going to give you lots of opportunities to see how the MongoDB platform can be used to load and ingest data in an automated and semi-automated way. And when we're finished here, we're not stopping. We're going to look at other things we can do to enable developers to be more effective with this data set. The next thing on my list, although I am the worst user interface programmer in the world, is trying to get somebody to build some kind of user interface to render this data in a more meaningful way than just a table of fields and values.
I think that, I mean, there's so much that can be done with it. And as you said, unlike other hackathons where you're presented with a relatively small static data set, this is there is a challenge to overcome in understanding this, but the scale and also the kind of currency of it is superb. And as you delve into it, you will see that there's indexes. There's a Goldstein index for sentiment, going from -10 to +10, positive news, negative news, and everywhere in between. And also, as Joe mentioned earlier, the Cameo codes, which I think are very interesting. We'll have to keep probably a session just for those as well to understand those.
By next, well, maybe not next week, but in 2 weeks' time, I'll come back and give a full breakdown of Cameo codes, because I'll have done a lot more work on them by then.
Yeah, so things like the Cameo code route or the index route will also surface up really interesting apps. And we're hoping people will build, web apps, mobile apps using all of the MongoDB services and products that we have as well too. Ultimately, to enter the hackathon, you need to make a submission by the closing date, May 20th. And the submissions will happen via our forums. The submission is simply a short description with a 3-minute or so video demonstration of what you've built and a link to your repo. We have, as I said, a lot of people registered already, 200 plus. We want people to team up, I think, is one of the things that we're trying to corral in this hackathon at the moment, insofar as it's really easy in the real world to do this in a conference room or in a company, to pull people together and mass them around tables. In the virtual space that we occupy at the moment, it's a little harder. So don't be shy. If you have an idea for what to do in a project of the hackathon, we have a category in the forums called Projects Looking for Hackers, where you get to post your project idea and also maybe the technical requirements you're looking at from teammates. And similarly, we also have Hackers Looking for Projects. So if you don't have any really good ideas yourself, you can post your skills and hopefully you'll get snapped up there as well too. And that's what we're trying to do. I think, hackathons, any ones that I've participated in the real world, really work well from the, when you've got a few people gathered together trying to solve a common problem. And we're hoping to try and emulate that a little bit in the forum space that we have as well too. So I think, Joe, do you have anything else to throw in, or we do our parting comments and send people the various directions to join and register?
Put 2 links in the comments, the Python package for GDELT tools and the repo for GDELT tools, which has additional utilities. So git clone the GitHub repo to get to all the other bits and pieces I'm working on, the make file and the scripts and so on. And if you want to run the GDELT loader, much easier, just to pip install the package, whereby you can just run the GDELT loader. And like I said, master, you can use -master, -update, -download, and then -last, which will give you the last number of days.
Brilliant. And it's fair to say you're going to be making some enhancements and additions to these as well.
So like I said, I'm going to fix that bug that just popped up there for sure. And I'm going to run this. I'm going to write this validator in the next couple of days that will effectively allow you to check that your transformations have actually resulted in a valid set of files.
Great. So anytime, obviously, yeah, so any of those updates, Joe, make sure to pop them into the forums, and then anyone subscribed to the hackathon group will get the notification that you made those changes there. Sure, and it's all in the resources section of the hackathon. So anybody looking for information, pop in there, not only for GDELT, a load of links to MongoDB products, documents. We also have MongoDB University, which is free for everybody to partake in courses there as well too. So please share the information around this hackathon with whomever. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your friends. And We have prizes along the way. We've got swag. Developers like swag. We've got some interesting avenues in which we can deploy and deliver swag to people for participation. And obviously there are prizes towards the end as well too for all of the projects that are submitted. So it is about participation. It is about community mostly, and it's about learning. And I think the fact that we picked the GDELT dataset has a huge learning opportunity there, and we're very much looking forward to see what people build. So anything else, Joe, before we say goodbye?
Watch this space for more news on GDELT tools. We're going to continue to develop this package throughout the hackathon. It's kind of my project for the hackathon. And if you've got ideas for projects, don't tell us, tell the rest of the community, and come with a project. We have more people looking for projects than there are projects looking for people. So if you're looking for a project and nothing comes along, go start a project. A lot easier to bring people together when you're starting one than when you're looking for one.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a fully formed idea either. There's plenty of time. We've 5 weeks to go, and so throw up the project idea, get some collaboration, and see what comes out of it at the end of the day.
And you will have our esteem, and who doesn't want that?
Esteem, kudos, and everything else in between
all that good stuff.
Perfect. Well, Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. I know I kind of doorstepped you to come on board and share what you've been building.
Oh, good. And it's made me, nothing like a deadline. This morning, nothing worked. By this afternoon, it was all packaged up and ready to go.
I think that's the way. And I mean, Joe's not lying. I know how interrupted he is during his day. So if he's managed to make these work during his day, I'm sure those of you that can spare a bit of time can help enhance even these tools as well too. I'm for sure.
Yeah, we definitely want pull requests. This is a public repo. You can clone it. You can submit pull requests. I'll accept any and all feedback. I do have one outstanding task that I know somebody raised recently, which is just to double check this stuff works on Windows. I'm going to give it a spin out on Windows later on today. It should just work. But last time I said that about software, I got surprised.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, look, I think that's been a great introduction to GDELT. There is going to be more of these sessions. We're going to go deeper and deeper throughout each. Hopefully, we'll convince Joe to come back. I know we'll have Mark Smith, our other developer advocate, who's looking at the GDELT for us as well to onboard these. We do onboarding sessions twice a week. So if you think you've missed out on the hackathon, you haven't. We will be running live onboarding sessions to talk you through the registration process, the resources and tools that we have available for you on our forums, and also everything else in between as well too. So keep an eye on the events calendar in our forums for that. But the first step is go get registered if you're not registered already, and share it far and wide. The more, the better as far as we're concerned.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Shane.
Excellent. No, thank you, Joe. Much appreciated. And thanks everybody for tuning in. This will also be up in the forums and stay on our YouTube channel as well. So you can rewatch it if Joe went through things too quickly or the screen size was too small, etc. So that's, another resource to go to as well. Thanks, everybody.